Hello everyone, welcome to another live episode of Hacking with Friends. So when we first started this, we had fled Los Angeles and moved somewhere with incredibly terrible internet. So we were really worried about whether or not we could even do this, and we recorded everything a little bit early just to make sure that, for one, if we got phished and went to a nasty website, we'd be able to make sure we didn't get taken off the air.
Previously recorded.
And for two, also because we were afraid our internet would cut out. But now that things have improved, we want to take the opportunity to actually reply to your questions in real time. If you have any questions from our previous live streams, and also if you're too shy to ask questions, we pick some of the absolute best questions we found on our previous videos and compile them here to answer. So, Michael, you're going to be answering some questions as well. I understand there's actually some about you in this list. And of course, if you're in our chat on any of the platforms, that's Periscope, YouTube, LinkedIn, you can ask a question and we will reply to it live today. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. We've never done this before. So if this is something that you guys like, please let us know and we'll try to do it more often so we can get your questions answered.
Yeah.
So
we have a comment here to start out with. There's probably going to be some in the chat eventually, but
cool.
So yeah, let's see. Kit Rodriguez was asking on our Parrot Security OS video. I love hacking myself, but this is a weird question. Not weird, but it's definitely a question. Why do people showcase how simple it is to use? Isn't it kind of scary? Because literally anyone can pick this up and use it for the wrong purpose. Not everyone is responsible.
Yes. So we have been doing hacking education stuff for a long time, and we get this question all the time. Ever since I started as a writer at Nullbyte, all the way through when I was doing videos for Hack5, we constantly get people asking, why are you guys teaching this stuff?
Right.
If you're teaching something that somebody could use for something bad, then aren't you kind of responsible for them going out and doing that bad thing? Well, my argument to that is always, we are training the next generation of defenders. We need people to understand, people who are involved with business and infrastructure and other things that might not just be hacking, how these attacks work and where they're vulnerable. If we don't give people the tools to defend themselves, then they're not going to be any stronger just by not knowing these attacks exist. There's always going to be a class of criminals and paid hackers who are going to have access to these tools. So our mission is to bring this stuff to you so that you know about these threats, you're able to defend against them, and if you're going into hacking like being a penetration tester or something like that, and you want to do your absolute best to really provide value for the company you're working for and show them what real attacks look like, you need to know what this stuff really looks like, rather than just kind of doing the easy legal stuff that's been around forever, because that's not what cutting edge hackers use. The kind of stuff that you want to defend against nowadays is always evolving. And we're here to kind of provide the information about where threats are going, how these attacks work, and if you're a defender, what you really need to be worried about.
Right. Yeah, it's all about being an informed citizen, right? Like, you can't bury your head in the sand and be like, oh, bad guys have all this stuff, you know, I don't. Like, if you want to be able to protect yourself, you need to know, like, what is real. Because I think a lot of people also get this, like, false perception from, like, movie hackers and stuff like that about what's actually possible. And knowing what is really possible is scary, but just because something is scary doesn't mean, like, people don't need to know about it, right? In fact, it means they probably need to know about it more.
Right. And really, like, I like to make the analogy, like, knowledge about plumbing is considered to be very niche. If you have a plumbing problem, which only comes up occasionally, you got to call some plumbing guy, or you got to watch a video on YouTube. Those are kind of the modern ways of dealing with that problem. If every single cybersecurity problem, or if even the most basic hacking problems are this like niche secret knowledge that only people with a computer science degree know, and they're really expensive, then you can expect the average business to be super vulnerable because the information isn't out there for them to defend themselves.
Security through obscurity is not security at all.
Exactly. So when we are doing a presentation on, for example, Wi-Fi hacking, and we want to tell people exactly how insecure Wi-Fi is. Well, if you're designing an entire business using Wi-Fi devices and you don't know that they can be hacked or knocked off the network at any time, it's not making your business any better by keeping that information secret, because a really dedicated adversary could come through, hit you, and you would have no way of defending yourself because you just don't know about it.
A short anecdote here is we were at a major conference and we had a major producer of Wi-Fi access points come up to us after a talk and be like, oh my god, I didn't realize that you could de-auth Wi-Fi. And I'm just thinking here, like, you are on the design team that manufactures access points at your company, and you don't know anything about wireless attacks against it, those are the people we're aiming these videos at, so they get informed, so they have the knowledge to go back to their company and make these cases on why you need a bigger budget for security, why you need to hire security engineers on your teams, and so forth.
Okay, so we have another question that's come up, and this question has come up many times. Could we go to my screen? Is that possible?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so here we have the live chat. I'm going to go up, and we have the question, why don't you ever blink in your videos? This is probably the most common question that we are asked on the Nullbyte channel, and the answer is that I wasn't programmed to prior to a certain update. But now that I've been updated, I'm indistinguishable from a real person.
Yeah. Beep, beep, boop, boop.
But also, I will say that we've always had a very stressful job. For one, creating a YouTube channel that nobody thought was going to succeed at first, that was very stressful. We never knew if anyone was actually going to be watching this stuff. And I was basically working with a production crew who was getting paid basically nothing. So all of us together trying to get this thing off the ground was a very stressful job. And I think that after 5 or 6 takes of just not knowing why I was messing things up, I was probably gripping something under the table so hard that I just forgot to blink.
Well, you may not believe this, but I would also attribute it to the fact that early on in the videos, I would tell you to look at the camera and not to blink, or not to say ums, and focus more and stuff. And I don't know if you internalize that too much.
Oh yeah, it's all Michael.
Master plan.
Yeah. In reality, though, I drink a ton of coffee. My job is very stressful, and sometimes you just gotta buckle down and get through that take, and blinking's just wasted memory,
wasted energy.
Yeah, so I can only run so many programs at the same time.
Did we have other questions?
Of course we do. Of course we do. Can you hack a Roblox account since you can hack? Yes, we could. We could hack a Roblox account, but why would we? I have a sweet job doing nothing illegal at all, so if I hacked a Roblox account, I would do something illegal and I would get in trouble. Potentially, maybe. Or I could be blackmailed in the future. I don't want that, so no, I'm not going to do that. Probably the number 2 question, no, the number 3 question I ask is, can you hack this sort of account? YouTube, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Can you get into some, Instagram is probably the most common. And the answer is probably. Phishing attacks are very effective. And anybody can run them. I have a whole series of videos about how they work. I would never personally do anything that would compromise the security of anyone's account, no matter if it's your grandmother's, mother's, sister's, father. I don't really have the capability of analyzing. So if anybody wants me to hack a personal account for justice, revenge, suspicion of cheating, which you're a creep if you ask that, my answer will always be no. I'm happy to point you towards guides that would probably allow you to do all of these things yourself. If you really want to jump off the cliff and do something potentially illegal, that's on you. But I will never, ever, unfortunately, no matter how just your cause is, just because of how many people have inventive stories when they actually just want me to hack their girlfriend's Instagram, make sure that she's not talking to anyone else, I will never actually be able to take on a job like that. Now, could you watch one of our videos and learn to hack into a Roblox account? Yes.
Well, just another side note along those lines, too, is also be very careful. A lot of the times in the comments, we'll have spammers, and those are the ones I deal with all the time. I literally, on a daily basis, as part of my job, delete over 200 spam comments on our videos from, they'll be Insta-hack or claiming they'll hack Instagram accounts for you, but in reality, they're either scamming you for money or your account credentials and just going to hack you back.
Okay, so I have a question from Blake on LinkedIn, and it's a really good question. What programming language do you prefer newbies to learn? And one thing you should know about me is I've developed proof of concepts and stuff like that, but I'm not a computer science person. I've had 5 computer science classes. I know Python, I know Arduino, I know some C++, and I know a little bit of some other languages. So I'm not always the best person to ask, but I do know a lot of people who have gotten into programming from other careers, so I can answer from kind of that perspective. So I would say if you're a beginner, and this is kind of ironic because the answer is at the end of the question, Python and Bash are 2 really good things to know how to do. I find that a lot of computer science people don't have very good experience with networking, and they don't have a lot of good experience with command line stuff like bash scripting and stuff like that. Ironically, our computer science classes didn't even get into command line stuff. They just had us doing programming and then running the program, and we never learned how to use bash scripts. We never learned how to simplify a lot of the stuff we were doing by creating automated ways of doing it. Two of our roommates have jobs where their entire job is writing bash scripts and Python scripts to do all the back-end stuff for a really important multinational corporation. So these are skills that actually do translate into security-related jobs, and you can get like basic jobs, especially with the background like doing some SOC analyst stuff. That would be a really good mix to throw in to show that you can, hey, develop a proof of concept, patch stuff, fix stuff, update stuff, and maintain infrastructure.
So I absolutely agree. Like Python 3 is where to start. I took a computer science class and it started out in C++. I was lost. And I then took the same class a couple semesters later in Python, and it was much easier. So Python 3 is where it's at. The recommendation I would make on top of that is pick a project. Think of something you want to do with Python, and then use that project as your means by which you learn Python. You're going to be able to stick with it a lot better. Like, it's great to take a course and learn, and that's all valuable. But at the same time, it can be a little tedious. It can be just generally hard to stay focused on. But if you have a project, you can, go to Stack Overflow, look up questions, solve problems as you encounter them, and it's something that's a lot easier to stick with.
Cool. So I have a question from Twitter that came in right as we were starting this. So it was asking about what's my methodology using macOS for penetration testing and hacking. So I do have a macOS machine. When I first started at the Nullbyte channel, the previous editor went on Twitter and told all of his followers and stuff that I wasn't a real hacker because I used a macOS system. So clearly I didn't know what I was doing. There's a lot of people who are very attached to their operating system, and it makes them feel like precious and special, and they're just like, I'm the best Windows guy. I don't understand that at all. It's a tool like any other tool. I can pick up a Windows computer, a macOS computer, or a Linux computer, and I can use them all perfectly well to do what I want to do, either through PowerShell or through a terminal window. It's all kind of the same once you kind of get used to it. I would say a macOS computer is very Linux-like in that you can do most of the Linux things you want to do on, for example, an Ubuntu system on macOS. Homebrew is an amazing package manager for macOS systems that allows you to quickly install Linux programs and make this a very viable thing for doing almost everything you would want to do. But there are always going to be some restrictions. For example, working with wireless cards is very locked down. macOS hasn't really released a driver that allows you direct access to an external wireless network adapter. So while you can do stuff in, for example, like a Linux virtual machine, and Parallels is really the best one I've found, although they're not free for students, so I don't recommend them. But if you want me to, Parallels, you should just make it free for students. But VirtualBox will work perfectly fine to run Kali Linux, for example, and then allow you to work with wireless network adapters. There's just some limitations on what you can do with this machine. I would just say that if you have a big, expensive, stupid computer like this and you can use it for Linux stuff, more or less, I like using it because things just work. And I have run almost all of my Linux installations into the ground with all the experimental stuff that I do. So I generally use this as my work computer because stuff just tends to work on it well. And then all my unstable things that are going to rip my computer apart potentially, I run on my Linux box because it's a good sacrificial tank to just take a bunch of hits and just keep running. So that's my recommendation. If you're working with a macOS system, it's really hard to dual boot it. I recommend using a virtual machine. And aside from that, it's a pretty good way of getting started with hacking. Another question was, can we use a gaming PC as a hacking machine? Easily, just dual boot it. If you have a computer with great specs, like I recommend, if it's not a macOS machine, dual boot it. Just allocate part of your hard drive to running like Kali Linux or Ubuntu. I really recommend Ubuntu for beginners that are getting into hacking, and I think you'll have a really great Linux experience. And
in fact, I would recommend looking into something like Unraid, which is a good dual boot option, like hypervisor to manage all that. And in fact, a gaming PC is going to be very powerful for running things like Hashcat and John the Ripper and other things that are going to be GPU intensive, because in theory you have a really nice GPU on a gaming rig.
Cool. So we have another question that's, what's the best way to run a Raspberry Pi headless? So, and also, now unknown but previously blank dot, would like a shout out to his video, and he does make nice videos on this sort of stuff. So if you like hacking, maybe check that out. I use a Raspberry Pi, which if you haven't used one before, is a single board Linux computer that's really cheap, really easy to find, and really easy to work with. We have tons of them around here. I'm looking at one right now. And generally, if you want to use the wireless card inside of it to be a communications tool, so if you want to, for example, use your like Android phone to connect to your like Kali Linux Raspberry Pi and just do all the commands through there, it's pretty easy to set this up. But generally, you either need to have your Raspberry Pi connect to your phone's hotspot. So you turn on the Raspberry Pi and your phone's hotspot. The Raspberry Pi recognizes it, connect, and then you can connect back via like VNC. Or if you want to have your Raspberry Pi create a hotspot, then you connect to it. The only problem is if you're doing Wi-Fi hacking and you select the wrong card, it will basically cut the connection and lock you out, and you have to reboot the Raspberry Pi. So that's the way I personally did it. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it worked quite well. Now I actually have now that I'm more fancy, I actually have a SIM hat for my Raspberry Pi, so it'll connect to a cellular network, and I could have it just call back like a server or something, like a VPS or something. If you want to be really fancy, I would say having a persistent out-of-band connection that you're not going to accidentally put into monitor mode would be the best way to do that. It costs an extra like 60 to 80 bucks depending on which cellular module you get, but suddenly you have a really persistent hacking machine, which the internal card is capable of being put into monitor mode and hacking a bunch of stuff. So I would say that kind of makes it into a really advanced like hacking machine if you wanted to go that route. I haven't fully tested this, but just having tried out a bunch of different hardware with the Raspberry Pi, I think that would be probably the way I would fix the configuration that could potentially lock you out.
Meanwhile, I'm a lot simpler. I'll just Ethernet in my Raspberry Pi and then SSH it. Like
but but if you want a full headless experience where you can see the screen and like you can run GUI applications or like GUI applications, and that's what I would do.
Although you got to remember that it's going to be a little clunky VNC and stuff. Like you can tell that like it slows the performance down.
Okay, so we have another question. I have a Panda PAU06. Should I get the Panda PAU09? So the PAU06 I believe is 2.4 gigahertz only, and the PAU09 is not. So I just want to make sure. PAU09. So the PAU09 is a Panda wireless network adapter. I believe it's dual band, so it's 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So I
have that one. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, I do too. So I own this one. I like it. And I would say if you're going to do 5 gigahertz hacking, this is probably the best one that I can recommend on a budget that's not an Alpha Wireless network adapter. In general, I recommend Alpha Wireless. I like their products better. They're a little bit more premium, and also they were nicer to us via email. But the Panda Wireless people are fine. They're based in like somewhere near like Fresno, California, or just outside San Francisco. So like we used to be pretty close to them too, and their products work really good. So the PAU09 is a dual band. If I was looking at you were asking about the PAU06. I just want to remember. I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, so the PAU06, if I'm seeing... None of these look like the PAU06. Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah. So the PAU06, the one thing that these have in common is that they can both have a directional antenna put on them.
Yeah, external antenna.
Exactly. So you can screw off this little antenna and put a different one on. Not particularly subtle, because there's like the PAU05, I believe, that looks like a USB stick and is also dual band. So if you're looking for something that's more subtle, I might recommend that instead.
Well, I was going to say for the price difference too, something you can investigate is Simple Wi-Fi's Yagi antenna. Or some of the simple Wi-Fi antennas, if you don't need the 5 gigahertz.
Oh, here we go. Sorry. So this is the one I was talking about. So this one's 5 gigahertz as well, and it looks like a USB stick. So if you don't want this crazy thing with like horns coming out that's like looks
that's going to be
insane,
more discreet.
This is going to be more discreet. It won't have as much range, and there's no external antenna. But if you wanted to do the PAU09, you have 2 external antennas. You can put like crazy stuff on if you want to, and do things like fox hunting, where you can have a directional antenna sweep around and try to find the location of a device.
And that's why I was saying with the Yagi antenna, it's very powerful for that. In fact, on our Security Forward channel, we have a video. One of the first videos we did was on using various directional antennas and showing their range.
Cool. So we have another question, which is, what do you think about Cloudflare's secure DNS and them never using personal info? So It's the same problem that you get with any VPN provider, where it's like,
oh, right. You have to trust
originally,
them.
yeah, like originally, like anybody on your network can see this, anybody on your network can exploit this. So there's the local risk that you're kind of mitigating. But then when you're moving all this data away, you just suddenly have to hope that Cloudflare is not like actually logging this, or that other people aren't logging it for them, or they're not going to have a big data breach that allows everybody to see what you've been doing.
Yeah.
So DNS is a sensitive topic because it's every website you go to, it's every lookup that you make. So giving one company access to all of that information, do you want to give that to like, I don't know, like Spectrum or whatever your internet provider is, and have them possibly sell that information? Because that's legal. Your internet provider can sell your internet history. That's not something that's private.
What I would say is, compared to just using your default internet service provider, ISP, yes, use Cloudflare over them. Also, like, I mean, what's the other big ones you might do, like Quad9 and Google? Like, do you want Google to have even more of your data? Like, in some ways, you're diversifying, like, who has all of your data. The reason I like Cloudflare and I use it is just because it's, like, one of the fastest. But yeah, I mean, it's all like your threat model. Like, are you more concerned about individuals hacking you, or are you more concerned about your data being included in a big pool of data?
Yeah. All right, so we have another great question from Michael Buckby, I think. It's, are there any practical examples of using machine learning or AI in hacking? So Michael
Deepfakes.
Well, yes, yeah. So Michael and I both attended a conference called EnigmaCon, and in EnigmaCon, this was years ago, they were talking about how they had developed AI tools that basically were trained on vulnerabilities over and over and over to recognize what vulnerabilities look like. So they were trained on classes of vulnerabilities, not specific vulnerabilities. So they basically created neural networks and learned how to identify classes based on these specific isolated examples. And after running this new classification system against actual production software, they were able to identify not just a series of vulnerabilities that had not been identified by a human, but also new classes of vulnerabilities. So this was a really interesting turning point in having a testing tool that's basically able to find things that a human just hasn't been able to do, even through extensive testing and some of the best experts in the world. So AI really is becoming an expected part of some of the verification and high-level testing of really secure, really important applications, because nowadays attackers can use the same methodology to try to identify 0 days that just haven't been identified because humans aren't good at thinking in this way. So in the future, expect to see AI substantially change the way that we identify 0-day vulnerabilities, and probably change the way that hackers check companies that they're working for to identify common problems or misconfigurations in software. Because if you think of some of the frameworks penetration testers already use to do a pen test, they're already kind of punching above their weight in terms of what one individual is usually able to find. It's the tools that they use that make them more sophisticated and able to conduct scans and vulnerability assessments based on work other people do. You can expect these AI tools to be integrated into that tool set and eventually become an important part of identifying serious flaws.
And slightly on the more like mundane side is like, historically we've used things like CAPTCHAs to rate limit brute forcing attacks, but with a neural network, it can be trivial to defeat those CAPTCHAs, at least like the earlier generations of like click the traffic lights, kind of stuff. So definitely something to watch out for.
So as a follow-up to the conversation we had about programming and what's a good language for beginners, I see a mention about Ruby and a question about it. I've heard a bit about Ruby, but also I'm hearing a lot more about Rust now. So if you're interested in a language that's like memory safe, it's kind of similar to C. Like a lot of hackers are using Rust nowadays, and they seem to really, really like it. So an up-and-coming language that's a bit more technical than Python. So I would recommend some experience in like
not the first language you want to learn.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're interested in a language that's a little bit more technical than Python, but has a lot of advantages and is kind of hot in the hacker community, then I've seen a lot of people using Rust, and they seem really satisfied by it. With my level of education in computer science, I'm much more comfortable in Python and Bash and stuff. So while I have ambitions to learn some more Rust, I have not actually done it myself.
Well, and also so many tools are written in things like Python that learning Python is very valuable, because when you go to any random GitHub tool, the odds are that it's going to have some Python or all Python, so like you can interpret it and actually utilize that language a lot more commonly.
Okay, so then we have another question. Can you point me to a video that teaches me how to hack accounts / stealing passwords? Sure, but why? But also, I mean, check out the entire Nullbyte channel because that's like all that we do. Okay. Next. Also, do you can, okay, so that's a, oh yeah, so if you guys want to get in some more fun advanced Wi-Fi hacking stuff, I see a mention of a Yagi antenna on Amazon. We've worked with Simple Wi-Fi before on some of their directional antennas, and we've had incredible results. We were able to get, as you can see in our security forward video, one of our first ones, we were able to get, I think, like 3 to 5 miles of range using some of their directional antennas. So I highly recommend Simple Wi-Fi if you're interested in some like really cool Wi-Fi hacking stuff. They have some great
yeah, and they're always present at the conferences, and well, not that those happen much anymore, but yeah, they're good people, and they have a good YouTube channel. I think his name's like Raul or something.
Yeah, Raul. Yeah.
Good content on there if you're interested in Wi-Fi, like the analog side of Wi-Fi.
Okay, so we have a question about what kind of damage can you do if you connect your Kali Linux machine to an Ethernet jack in an office? Is it possible to inject malware in that way? If yes, how? Okay, so this is
everything.
Yeah, this is a pretty incredible threat. So let's say that you have someone who has limited access to a building, and they manage to find like a closet or something that has an Ethernet jack. So, or even they're able to find.
They're in lobbies, like they're everywhere.
Yeah, maybe they find an Ethernet jack that's under a table where someone's not going to notice for a while, and they get a couple, like a minute or so alone in a room. If they were able to place a Raspberry Pi and plug it into the Ethernet jack, that would mean that that person had a direct line of communication into the Raspberry Pi, and then a direct line of communication into the network. So they could scan the network, they could determine which other devices were on the network, they could basically reconfigure the internal network using an ARP spoofing attack to make themselves the center of the network, so all traffic passes through them.
So they're emulating the router.
Yes, and then they can go through and start redirecting people to pages that host malware. Now they can either try doing like drive-by downloads of malware, where they're redirecting people to websites that have JavaScript or something else that's trying to either inject it or just automatically download it, or they can try to phish that person into thinking they've been maybe kicked out of their account and they need to log in again, steal the password, and then, I don't know, email them malware from their own email address.
We have a previous live stream where we actually did that, and we were redirecting people on the local network to Cat Fancy, or an older version of Cat Fancy or whatever. The one thing I would say to note is if it is a more enterprise-grade environment, it is somewhat likely, to very likely, that those are going to have their own VLAN, and so you might be on your own isolated network when you plug into that. Or it might not be connected to a switch at all. Like it might just be the wire in the wall. Just something to look out for. But like in the vast majority of like small business situations, like that's just going to be plugged straight into the switch and router, and you have full access.
So we have another question. How can you hack your school, which runs Windows with blocked USB ports? Educational purposes only. Well, if you're in school, it's obviously educational. So I would recommend just, rebooting the machine and then entering the very common key that is basically to pretty much all like enterprise Windows machines that are in like public environments that allows you to boot it in a different sequence so you can just run Kali Linux.
Oh yeah, boot into the BIOS and then change the boot order so that you boot your own OS.
Not that I would ever do that, and only for educational purposes.
Exactly.
Next question. Hello from France. It's not a question, but hello. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
So next we have Mikhail Buckby, and he's asking, what's the most ridiculous fake hacking thing you've seen on TV or in a movie? Let me show you. Oh, this is my all-time favorite
There's
scene.
like montages on YouTube that are great.
Yeah, but this is my very favorite one. The question
the
my
one
favorite.
Is this Castle? Yeah.
I don't... Here we go.
I used to watch this TV show. I loved it.
I love it. Love it.
By Loxat?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we've been so careful. How could they find us?
Oh yeah.
Found us yet. Just crack the outer layer.
Okay, so let me just cut right into it.
This is the proper way to denial service attack.
Doesn't seem like Loxat.
Sorry.
Who would do that?
We're about to find out.
That barely slowed him down. I'm sorry, but he's going to find us in less than a minute. Should we abort?
No, we've only got 2 of the blinky boxes left to do.
Yes, the blinky boxes. I like the cube that's assembling the package.
Yes.
Got it.
They've also got a live satellite feed.
That's Castle's office.
He must be working with Haley.
Oh my
She's
God.
got the skill set for this, and she is about to breach our firewall. If she does, they'll have instant access to our entire investigation.
Not the firewall.
Target on Castle's back. We have to stop him.
I can do
Because you
it
would
in
never
time.
have to enumerate the network afterwards and find where the file is. You just instantly know what their file structure is like.
Of course, of course.
Answer it. Let's see how much she knows.
Hey,
Hey, babe.
change your mind about tonight?
Tonight's still not gonna work.
This is also why you don't ever hack someone you know, because they'll call you and ask if it's you.
My
Yeah.
office.
The
That
flaw.
sounds great. I'm, sort of in the middle of
I run
something
that
right
program.
now.
Really? That's too bad, because I'm right downstairs.
Downstairs?
Yeah. I can be up in 10 seconds.
Social engineering. Actually pretty accurate. I have to say, this part of the scene is probably
Yeah.
the most accurate of anything.
No. She's lying. Her phone is pinging from Queens.
She knows it's us who's hacking her.
Oh my God, a double cross.
Triple
Sorry
cross.
about that. Just taking off my pants. You coming up?
What?
He knows I'm lying.
Oh my gosh, a double triple cross.
You know what? Something just came up. Rain check?
Sure. You know where to find me.
Okay.
Here we go. Now it all comes down to this. This is a tool I've used many times. We don't let many outsiders know about it.
She's almost in. I could launch a cyber nuke, but it'll completely fry his system.
It hurts to see someone launch a cyber nuke.
He's got a backup system at home.
Is that a go for launch?
Do it.
Yes.
There it goes. Oh my God.
What just happened?
I cannot tell you how many companies I've worked for that have been taken down by a cyber nuke. You guys need to be careful out there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's my favorite hacking scene of all time. If you guys don't like it, I don't care, because it's in my opinion the best. All right, so
we also have some of the comments from the videos.
yes,
we can
yes,
go
we
back
do.
to.
So one last question from our live ones, and then we'll jump into a couple of the other ones we have from our previous videos. So I have a lot of people asking me, hey, my friend has been personally impacted by this. They've been locked by their account. Someone has something they shouldn't. They've been harassed by this person. Can you hack into their account or teach me how to hack into their account?
Contact support.
Yes.
Do the yeah.
So what I have to emphasize is there's a lot of laws around hacking where if you're in a situation where you have been wronged, someone you know has been wronged, you care about someone, you're trying to like help them out, realize that these sorts of things are very traceable. There are systems in place to basically identify anybody who's either doing something unusual or anybody who's accessing a network. And these logs can be used against you. So if you're not a very technical person and you're looking to get into hacking just to do a single act, like help a friend out who maybe had some photos on a different person's phone that they shouldn't have had, that person maybe shouldn't have anymore. That's a situation where if you do something that is illegal, there's evidence of it. And that person who is committing a moral wrong has basically technical evidence you committed a legal crime. It's not going to matter because while they might be doing something unethical, you are doing something illegal and they can strike back against you. So just realize when you're getting into hacking, there are consequences and there's evidence and there's forensic evidence that is left with everything that you do. So for anybody who's looking to right a wrong via hacking or settle the score, realize that these powers come with consequences and there will always be people who are more skilled at hacking than you. So if you are doing something that is illegal in your country, even if someone is doing something unethical, someone may come for you, and that is on you if you choose to do it.
Yeah.
And that might not seem like a real threat or a real crime or like a real possibility, but people get prosecuted for this stuff all the time. It only takes a complaint for the victim, from the victim. So just be aware that even if you think you have a really good reason to hack someone, you should very carefully consider the magnitude of the crime in your country and whether or not it's worth it to put yourself at that sort of risk.
Yeah, that's why I always encourage people, like if your account got hacked, contact the support structure for that account, contact law enforcement, go through the normal channels. It's not worth, potentially going to jail over.
So we have one question from LinkedIn. You touched on some programming languages that allow for memory management or direct hardware access. Could you please embellish on situations where the language in use could allow resource augmentation providing for more efficient use, like JavaScript, Ruby, in relation to low profile data crunching, low latency network usage, or modifying firmware. So unfortunately, I'm not enough of a computer science student to answer your questions when it comes to those lower level languages. You would need to refer to one of my friends, either Stefan Kremser, who writes extensively for microcontrollers, or one of the people he works with that works with Rust. I myself do not work with Rust or JavaScript or Ruby. Just because I'm very comfortable with Python, and most of my job is actually working with a huge variety of tools that don't really allow me to become an expert on any specific one. So unfortunately, I can't really steer you there. But I would recommend maybe you reach out to one of our partners who's on live streams with us pretty constantly, who works with those lower level languages.
And something else I would say is if you do a quick Google search for Rust and Microsoft blog, they have 2 or 3 blogs from when Rust was first coming out that really go in depth about the advantages and how all that memory safe storage stuff works. Unfortunately, I don't have any more details than that.
So we have a question. Can you do a video on how not to get caught and what mistakes not to make? Actually, that sounds kind of cool, because some of my favorite videos have been on how some of the really famous examples of like cybercrime, like Ross Ulbricht, for example, got caught via making a couple small mistakes. Now, I've also been like part of some demonstrations where I've seen like police agencies reconstruct the investigation and show exactly how you could catch someone like this. So it would be really interesting to show some modern examples of how criminals can get caught, or how people who are doing something that they think is sneaky can actually be exposing themselves in certain ways.
And
so we can definitely do that, because there's a lot of historic examples. There's been some incredible news coming out even recently about an attacker controlling 20% of the Tor exit nodes, meaning you have basically almost a 1 in 4 chance of connecting to a malicious Tor node that's monitoring you if you're using Tor. So there's a lot of really crazy stuff coming out that people who are trying to be private are getting tripped up by, and doing a review of that would actually be pretty fun.
Also, look at some of the older DEF CON talks. I know there's at least one talk by an FBI agent about how they captured like some mega credit card scammers from Russia. There's also another one about some of, like I think you were alluding to, of how they de-anonymize Tor users. So definitely 2 DEF CON talks you should look up.
Cool. So we have a question about, can you tell me about your work for Varonis? Sure, I would love to. So I got hired at Varonis after I had been running a production team for about 2 years. I was producing work for both the Hack5 and the Nullbyte channels, as well as making our own video. We have a ton of experience working with the hacker community, and we also have a lot of experience kind of explaining technical concepts to people who might not be the most technical. So those were both skills that were highly in demand at Varonis, because they are trying to reach out to the hacker community and show that we care about them, that we are huge fans of developing interesting and unique hacking tools so that we can keep our clients just safer and better off. And also my my research into Wi-Fi hacking and some of the things I'm really passionate about sync up really well with demonstrations, going to conferences and teaching people about stuff, because you basically can't stop me anyway. So Varonis recognized that and kind of like helped turn me loose and give me some of the resources to, for example, produce the show, do some of the amazing, really fun demos I've done at RSA and other conferences, and otherwise help me out when it comes to doing trips like the conference I attended at C3, where I got to teach workshops and go to some of the local hacker spaces in Germany. Those have all been amazing benefits of working at Varonis. And it's also really cool that I work on a team that's super diverse. I work on a team with a lot of marketing people. I have a lot of technical people I work with. So I've been learning a ton about just business working at Varonis that I didn't have the opportunity to while I was just kind of out there producing videos with my own small team, even though we had a lot of different clients that we were producing videos for. So this has been a pretty amazing experience at seeing how a company that does things really professionally and has a product that actually like makes sense for people. Because a lot of the time you get to RSA and people are like, hey, do you have a fleet of boats? Are you interested in our security system for a fleet of boats?
Oh my gosh.
But Varonis is one of those things where like if you have important files and you have like employees that are using them, then it makes sense to have it at a certain point, because it would be so terrible to have a data breach if everybody has access to everything, that most people realize at a certain point that you need to start locking stuff down. So I really like working at Varonis because their solutions make sense, they enable my research, and I get to talk to you guys on streams like this. So yeah, I encourage you guys to look at some of the other resources too if you like this, because they're really invested in making sure the hacker community, and even just people like IT admins and people that are tasked with administering the stuff on a daily basis, have access to great free resources. Yeah. I have a laptop that has Kali Linux with nothing that could trace back to me. Is there a way that they could trace it back to me? Well, yes, there is. So
a
one of
multitude of ways.
yes. So some of the things we talk about are Grabify links and other tracking links that can identify a device uniquely. These are things like these are things like fingerprinting, like the language, the time zone, like all these like small details.
Pixel size of your
the
screen.
size of the window. All these things can be used to track devices in fine detail. So there's a lot of different ways that people can track you. Unfortunately, I deal a lot with like the Wi-Fi and physical ways that people can track you. So things like having a bunch of saved Wi-Fi networks in your computer keeps a log of all the different places you've been, and I can extract that information if I want to know, for example, if you go to a certain school. Like I can create fake Wi-Fi networks that look like your school Wi-Fi networks, and if your device tries to connect back to me, I know that you've connected before. So there's lots of different ways, both physically in person, that someone could pull information out of that machine, or digitally if you were to click on a link. So really, it's kind of about keeping your device as generic as possible, using common sense defenses like VPNs and stuff like that, and then otherwise just trying to not make yourself stand out from the crowd by like customizing things or having a bunch of like fancy like extra stuff on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and also just like you absolutely have to make sure you've never signed into any account. Like, you know, if you have, there could be a cookie somewhere. Like, there's just so much minutia of detail to keep track of in those situations. Like, yeah, short of using a burner laptop every time with a fresh install, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah, so let's go back to our pre-roll questions, and we can answer a couple more from...
Okay, there's going to be one minor hiccup. I'm going to disable the intro when we switch back, but I forgot to disable it.
Hey, whoa!
Whoa!
Security forward again.
Okay, here we are.
All right,
back.
cool.
Magic.
All right, so I think we already answered this one. Let's go back to it.
Yeah.
All right, so one question we have a lot is, where are we from? And I constantly say that we're in a flying C-130 over some country. But originally, we started this project in Los Angeles, so Southern California. We had Michael working from Tennessee, who eventually moved to Los Angeles to help us produce our videos and expand, because we started out working for Nullbyte, then we started working for Hack5, then we started making our own videos, and now our team also makes videos for Varonis while I work there. So we all kind of got together, and we have a team of, I think, like 5 or 6 people that have all appeared now that are just kind of in our little group of friends. So because we have so many hacker friends, and because we also live with a bunch of hackers, we tend to source them for our projects. So you'll see a lot of familiar faces, both in our Hack5 videos and then on our live streams. So if you ever want to say hi to Michael or Tim or Brandon or Christian or Nick or any of the other people that have appeared in our other videos, we're all kind of one big group of friends, so you'll probably see us together.
Short answer, Nashville, Los Angeles.
Yep.
No longer in any of those cities with the pandemic.
So we have left Los Angeles to a state in the northern United States, just until things calm down. Yeah, just away from the pandemic just for a little bit. So we are somewhere that is not Los Angeles for the moment, but I'm gonna punt that one. I'm sure you guys could figure it out.
Onward and upward. Oh yes, I love this one.
Okay, so we need to have a talk about sock puppet accounts. That's where someone creates an account that doesn't look like their own account and then leaves comments to try to get us to talk about them. So we got this really, in my opinion, suspicious comment on our last video, which was, I'd like to hear more from Michael. Does he have his own YouTube channel? If not, he should create one.
Kody says as he dominates the conversation. Thank you. But no, I do not have my own channel per se. I mean, obviously I have my own YouTube account, but I haven't created or uploaded videos there. I do have videos that I've created for other channels such as Nullbyte, and I also write on their website under the pseudonym Hoyd. However, that is definitely something I'm going to pursue in the future, so stay tuned, and I might have my own channel in the future.
Yeah, so Michael takes care of our production and is also our business and production manager. So he's in charge of working with all of our production people and basically making all this stuff happen. He also, as he said, is a co-star on the Nullbyte channel. So if you want to see him hosting any of the Nullbyte episodes that he's done, you can check it out. If you go to if you go to Wonder How To, the Nullbyte channel there specifically, you can look at his articles, and most of them have videos with them, so you can check them out there.
Yeah, awesome. Onward. asking about the Canary tokens. Is there an expiration for the Canary tokens?
Doesn't seem to be. I found an old token from like 3 years ago, and it's still getting pings because it was in it was in a nullbyte article that I wrote, and people just keep clicking on it. So it seems like at least Canary tokens don't expire. I'm not sure about Grabify links. I would have to. Maybe you should take a look at the Grabify website. They might say there, but I think Canary tokens are around for as long as you're using them. Although if they don't get a ping for like 5 years or something, then they might get swept up at some point. But typically Canary tokens are used for identifying things like a story they told me that blew my mind was a company set up a Canary token on the root directory of a server, and then years later they decommissioned the server, and then a year after that the server popped up in Russia. So they got a ping on the Canary token that someone had like recovered the server and accessed the root directory, and they only knew that because they left a Canary token and they completely forgot that it was still there. So they do seem to stick around for a very long time, even if you're not using them, and they're free. So I highly recommend Canary tokens for use cases like that. I think they're amazing, and they stick around for a long time.
And do we have like one final question from the chat?
This is one we've already answered.
You want me to do another one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Sorry. So the question is there any way to bypass software blocked USB ports on Windows when everything is controlled by an administrator? Yes, you have to basically reboot it, go into BIOS, put in a generic password, which you can generate from some website I'm not going to link to, and then you have BIOS access. Then you change the boot order, and then you're in whatever Linux system you want. But
okay,
yeah.
So from the detecting Wi-Fi attacks using microcontrollers with the author, do you have to do anything else to the ESP8266 to get it to work? Have you heard of any other interesting mods for the ESP?
Yeah, so we have a friend named Tabazo who works out of France, I believe, who's done a series of really interesting mods for the ESP32, I believe, that makes it a person counter that uses Bluetooth and Wi-Fi devices to just identify how many devices are nearby and store the data. I have never gotten it working, but I hear it's really cool. So a lot of people ask us why the more powerful ESP32 can't be used for some of the attacks that we do for the ESP8266. And really the difference here is these are two microcontrollers made by the same company, but years apart. One of them has an extremely simple API and SDK that allows us to go back and very easily craft packets from scratch. And the second one has a very complicated SDK that can be reverse engineered and messed with, but it takes substantially more time. And also there isn't currently that I'm aware of anyone who's shown their cards on getting the ESP32 to do what the ESP8266 can do. Now I happen to know that it is actually capable of doing this, but I'm not really at liberty yet to disclose how that actually works because the researcher I'm working with isn't ready to yet make that public. But as far as I know today, there's no way to do things like deauthing with the ESP32 that anyone has made public. Privately, I know that it is possible, and the process that you need to do in order to enable it is basically reverse engineering the entire SDK, which is not fun and requires a good amount of experience with Arduino and working with these expressive devices. So a lot of people really want the power that's in an ESP32 because it's newer and more powerful to be applied to some of these really cool hacking tricks the ESP8266 can do, but we're not quite there yet in terms of being able to get it to work.
Cool, and I think that's about all the time we have for today.
What?
If we have some chat.
Do one more question.
Okay. Let's see. Just a quick comment question.
No, skip that one. It's the exact same question.
Yeah. Okay, is the detection based on beacon frames also, or this is in relation to the War Driving Skateboard, the creep detector?
Yeah. Okay, so
how does it detect?
So if you haven't checked it out, on the Security Forward channel, we have the creep detector. Now, the creep detector was a project by our friend Alex Lin that basically took a Raspberry Pi computer, stuck it on a skateboard with the GPS, and then allowed him to skate around and collect data on wireless devices that were nearby. So he then took that data, put it into Jupyter Notebook, and was able to identify devices that were following him. And I love this technique because it's a really smart way of identifying whether or not someone might be creeping up on you or otherwise following you from place to place. And it's all put into a really small, really cool package. So if you haven't seen that video, you should totally check it out. Now, the question was, could we use other sorts of packets to identify when a device is nearby? And the answer is absolutely yes. the way that we worked with this was we basically imported the data into Jupyter Notebook and used certain flags in the packets to identify types of packets we were interested in. So if we wanted to expand that to other types of packets, provided they're unencrypted, that should work just fine. Now, we can also get some other metadata that's collected, but this is really limited to what Kismet or whatever program we're running to intercept the packets is gathering. So if we wanted to do something like maybe run Wireshark or something like that to gather all the packets, then that would probably allow us to search through them a bit more elegantly. But because we're using Kismet, and I'm not totally sure about the database structure since Alex Lin was the one that worked on this project, I think he was just exporting them to a CSV file and then using that to import into Jupyter Notebook. So it might not be including absolutely every packet. It might only be including a certain type of packet just from that source. So kind of a technical answer, kind of a technical question, but still a really, really cool project. And if you're just kind of curious about what you could do with a Raspberry Pi, a GPS, and a skateboard, it's one of my favorite projects that we've covered. All right, so I'll answer the last questions from the chat and then we'll call it good.
Yeah.
All right, so is there any, no, I already answered that one. Is there a way to make a URL look different? Yes, there is. So if you, for example, create like a Grabify link, there's a variety of different URL shorteners that can shorten it and make it look like it's just a generically shortened URL from Bitly or something else.
Although a lot of people are inherently suspicious of Bitly links and stuff.
It's whatever. If you drop a Bitly link, it'll go all the way. So let's say that you have a Bitly link that goes to a Grabify link that goes to a normal website. If you drop that link in a chat or to someone, it will preview this one at the very end, the normal website. It won't show you that there's a Grabify link. So when you click on the Bitly link, it'll take you through the Grabify link and the person will never see it. Or at least it won't be so obvious. So a second way of doing this is you can use a program called DNS Twist. DNS Twist looks for different domains that are extremely similar to a domain that you're interested in creating an obfuscated link for. So if you wanted to register a website for super cheap that looks so similar to the website you're trying to create a link that looks similar for, DNS Twist is a good way of doing that because it allows you to find really similar domains that are still open for registration. Today I got my Hack5 Elite Field Kit. Cool, expensive. That's so much fun, and got the Deauthor Monster V4 OLED. So yeah, there's a variety of different boards available for the Deauthor. I use just a bare ESP8266 on a D1 mini board most of the time, but there's some custom ones that are really, really cool, and yeah, they're a lot of fun. How do I decrypt packets in Wireshark? Last question, guys.
Oh my god.
So in Wireshark, if you want to decrypt packets, you need to do two things. First, you need to have the handshake for the device. So you need to have a device join the network so that you can grab that. Second, you need to take the Wi-Fi password or the PSK once you know it, so you need to know the actual password to the network you're trying to spy on. Go into the Wireshark preferences, go into IEEE, and then look for the 802.11 standard. Once you're there, you can go into the password field, add the password or PSK. PSK is preferred, which you can get by going on just Googling like WPA2 password to PSK. There's a Wireshark website that will allow you to convert your password into a PSK. When you have that big number, you drop it into Wireshark, and then as soon as the device starts a new session, meaning as soon as it joins like the Wi-Fi network freshly, you will be able to see what's going on. If you're still trying to listen in on a session that started before you started like listening in, it won't work because every time a device joins a Wi-Fi network, it creates a new session key. So even after you did all of that, you still have to kick the device off the network one more time, and then when they join again, you can see everything they're doing. Seems a little complicated because it is, but we're breaking encryption. Like it's not easy.
Okay, so that's a lot of questions we've answered today.
So this is our first live Q&A session. If you guys like this, please make sure to come to our next one. Let us know in the comments.
And we'll leave the comments going for a bit after this. I'll put up a screen in a minute where we can continue to answer some lingering questions. However, you know, Kody and I can discuss, but we can do this more often if y'all let us know in the comments, show your support, and we can do this, you know, every other week or once a month at least. Yep, so also make sure to check out all of our recorded streams on the Security Forward, that's Security FWD YouTube channel. We've got lots of great stuff there, including some of the, not like live streams, but actual videos that we've done, and then all the live streams we have done since. We'll have that one up there as well, and if you want to subscribe, you'll also see when we release these videos, and be able to subscribe to some of our scheduled events, which will let you know when they're coming up. And doesn't Varonis have a wonderful PowerShell course or something like that?
Oh, it sure does. And as Michael is reminding me, we want to give a big shout out to Varonis for making this possible. If you want to check out some of the other free resources they have, we highly recommend the AD PowerShell workshop, which teaches you the basics of getting started using PowerShell to work with Active Directory, which is otherwise pretty hard.
Yeah.
So they had a great expert come in and make the course. It's free for anyone who's interested. So you can check that out, as well as other great Varonis resources if you like all the stuff that we do. So
And we'll drop the link to that and our Security Forward YouTube channel in
Sure
the
will.
chat in just a moment. But yeah.
cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. Hopefully we see you next time. Thanks, Blank Dot, for watching all of our videos. Hopefully you liked all of them as well. And we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.